Okay, my name's Terry Campbell. I'm a retired senior scientist from IBM and General Dynamics. But today we're here not to talk about science or IBM or computers or counter-drug intelligence or anything like that. We're here talking about the IRS and the Internal Revenue Service overstepping their bounds. Now, rightly so, the Internal Revenue Service is one of the most feared and hated agencies within the federal government, because with them, they have absolute power over their subjects, which is us, because they are the judge, juror, and executioner. See, they can confiscate, they can garnish your wages, they can confiscate property and stuff without having to go through with warrants like the Justice Department does. They are kind of like a pseudo law enforcement agency all into themselves. Now, there's no checks and balances really on the Internal Revenue Service. Now, Congress says they have oversight, but the day-to-day actions of the Internal Revenue Service is way below their radar. So they miss what's going on, and in these congressional hearings, they only tell Congress what they want them to hear, not what's really going on. Okay, now, one of the problems is, the Internal Revenue Service, if you disagree with one of their decisions, they will either bankrupt you or they will just totally ignore you until you finally give up and accept their decisions. I mean, there's no way to really get back at them. So they need to be limited in their power, which has not happened. Now, one of the problems is the Internal Revenue Service right now has 90,000 employees, and their annual budget is over $12 billion. That's with a B. Now, and they're growing in power and strength every day, because this administration, with their infinite wisdom, they have turned over the implementation of the Patient Protection and Affordable Health Care Act to the IRS. Now, that really is a misnomer. It's not protecting the patients, which is us, and it's definitely not affordable. And that's a whole nother lecture. Let's move on. The Internal Revenue Service here, they need to be eliminated. Well, turning all of this over to the IRS is really a bad idea, because with their recent actions, I don't think I want them to have access to my personal medical information. Don't trust them. I'm sorry, just don't do it. Now, they really can't be trusted. The only way to really correct this festering this festering culture of corruption is to basically eliminate it. We need to basically, just eliminate everyone that currently works for the IRS and just replace them all. Because you can't just replace a piece at a time, because the corruption will still be there. Okay, now, us hardworking Christians here in the Middle America, the flyover states, usually we're totally ignored by the Beltway left-wing political groups in D.C. They don't even know we exist. So I've got a question. Why all the concern all of a sudden now? Could it be that the grassroots conservative movement, the groups are starting to become a threat to their progressive liberal establishment? Okay, now we have to start moving on here. because I'm here to talk to you about the Internal Revenue Service's attempt at intimidating the San Angelo Tea Party unsuccessfully. Now, the following I'm going to say was relayed in a letter with documentation, attachments, and everything else to my senators and congressmen. Now, okay, so far, Representative Conway's office has contacted me, wanted to know, is it okay if they pass the letter I sent to him on to the subcommittee that's investigating the IRS. And I told him that's why I sent it to him. I said it was to expose what the targeting actions of the IRS. And just recently, matter of fact yesterday, I got a phone call from Joanne Fleming, who is now working with Ted Cruz. And she promised to make sure that Ted Cruz has already got a copy of the letter. So she is going to take and make sure that he reads and analyzes all of the data and takes appropriate action. But so far we have not heard anything from Senator John Cornyn's office. Okay, now, the San Angelo Tea Party was founded back in the fall of 2009. And if it hadn't have been for TARP 2, there wouldn't be any Tea Party today. Because what happened was, see what they did, they took our taxpayer money and they bailed out the banks that are too big to fail. And over half the banks they bailed out were not even anchored in the United States. They were foreign banks. Well, that just didn't sit right with us, so we formed the San Angelo Tea Party. And in case you don't know, the T in Tea Party stands for taxed enough already. So now, if the current White House had behaved, regime, if they had behaved themselves, there wouldn't be any Tea Party today. Now, I'm going to skip on down. On March the 16th, the San Angelo Tea of 2010, we got to say this is back a while. The San Angelo Tea Party, we submitted the IRS Form 1024, and along with that, a check for $400 for the application fee to apply for a 501c4 tax-exempt status. Now, on April the 7th of the same year, we received a letter of confirmation from the Cincinnati office of the IRS stating that they had received our application and that they had received our check, and of course then it was cashed almost immediately, and that we could count on hearing from them within the next 90 days. Well, within the next 90 days. Now that was April 7th. We didn't hear from them until April 29th, which is 147 days later. And then they sent us a very intimidating letter. Now the letter, within the letter, it stated things in it like under penalties of perjury, and it was rather threatening. And actually, I've got a copy of that letter here. The letter here actually, the letter itself wasn't that bad, but it said under perjury to answer all these questions. Let me just read you a couple of the questions. We must provide the resumes of all of the board members. Provide the agenda or schedule detailing the specific topics covered at our meetings for the past year. And it says, please provide a list of events that you have hosted over the last 6 months. Now, this is, I mean, you just get the gist of it. Anyway, there was 10 questions on this. And basically the San Angelo Tea Party, they decided that after much discussion, they were not going to give that information to the IRS. So we elected not to become a 501c4, and we withdrew our application. Now, a full year and a half goes by, and then you get into January the 12th, 2012, which is over 600 days after the original filing. Okay, then we received a unsolicited correspondence from the Cincinnati office wanting information on our Tea Party activities. Now, since we had paid, since we were a taxable entity and we had paid our income tax 2010 and 2011, why were they sending us a question? Now, why is this the most hated and element of the executive branch of government wanting to know information of our actions? Could it be that there was an election coming up and they wanted to know what their competition is up to? Well, in this letter that they sent to us, there was 21 questions. Some of the questions has as many as 14 different parts to each question. Now, right here is a copy of the letter. I'd just like to read you a couple of them in here. Let me pick out a good one here. Okay, here's one. It says, okay, here is, who was your special guest? And, well, I'm not even going to read them. It's too complicated. Basically, what they're asking was they wanted a transcript of all of our guest speakers' speeches. Now, our speakers, they just know the subject. They just get up and talk about the subject. There's no transcript to be sent to them. And this was under perjury that if we don't answer all the questions completely. So we just, we basically told them, no, we're not going to do it. Well, so there was a statement in there that said, if you don't correspond by a certain time, you're null and void, we'll cancel your thing. So we said, fine, go ahead and cancel it. Well, about 3 or 4 weeks later, we got a phone call from the IRS office wanting to know why we hadn't responded to their questionnaire. Well, I didn't even want to do anything with them, so I turned it over to my secretary, not secretary, the treasurer, and Mary, and she called the IRS and told them we were not interested. So, and at that point, they shut it down and they didn't call us anymore. Now, there was a lot of things that they were wanting. See if there's, okay, now, if we'd have answered their questions, we would have been violating our own First Amendment and First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights. And the First Amendment would have been the violation of, the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly. Now, the Fourth Amendment, I'd like to just read that to you right quick. It says, the right of the people to be secure in their person, homes, papers, effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued, but upon probable cause supported by oath and affirmation. Particularly describing the place to be searched and the person and things to be seized. Now, if we would have answered that, we would have been violating our own Fourth Amendment rights. They have no right to that information. To me, that is personal, private information. Not only that, they can't be trusted. Okay, well, I guess in closing, thanks for your attention, and God bless America, and good night.